Phonological awareness is an important skill that for every learners like preschoolers and kindergartners to develop. A child will play with sounds in many ways to hear sounds that are isolated and manipulated. It is an important skill to develop before a student can learn to read. Let's just say if phonological awareness were a house, phonemic awareness would be one of the rooms. I would say that it's the kitchen or the living room because it's usually the area of phonological awareness. For example, counting the numbers of syllables in words would be phonological awareness activity. Phonemic awareness. It is the simplest of terms. It is considered an awareness of sounds. It is when you hear, identify, and manipulate phononyms. And these are the smallest units of sound that have meaning. One very important thing to emphasize is that phonemic awareness is done without letters. It is all sound. Once you add letters, it becomes phonics. Students need a strong phonetic awareness foundation before you add phonics on top of it. For many children, this comes naturally without explicit phonic instructions. Through children playing games, singing songs, and making connections while adults are reading with them. One example of a phonemic awareness activity would be counting the number of syllables or sounds in a word. What is phonemic awareness and how to teach it? Explanation of how phonological and phonemic awareness relates to literacy development in young children. Phonological awareness is one of the strongest predictors of reading success because if children are successful with the awareness, they will begin to read correctly. In other words, students are going to have a very difficult time learning and implementing phonics in reading if they don't have phonological awareness. Remember, that includes phonetic awareness too. How can a student sound out DOG, decoding the word, if they can't hear the three individual sounds? Phononyms, the makeup of the word. They can't. Therefore, it is so important that students can hear, blend, and segment sounds in words. Before learning to read using phonics, listening is so important to reading. Majority of instruction involves manipulating phononyms. After all, learning to segment and blend sounds and words is the most important aspect of phonological awareness. It's very common to start with words and syllables and then move to onset and rhyme. And finally, to phononyms. Why? It's logical progression. Start big, work your way towards small. Therefore, you may see or use the term phonemic awareness on an activity that has a warm-up involving syllables and/or onset and rhymes. Description of how early reading development is related to early literacy skills. Print concepts, letter naming, vocabulary, phonological awareness, listening, speaking, and comprehension. People often think that reading begins with learning to sound out letters. But most young kids are getting ready to read long before they understand the letters stand for sounds. Reading starts with children tuning into sounds of spoken words. That's where phonological awareness comes in. Most of us remember the hokey pokey and clapping out the syllables too. That's what it's all about. It seems just like a fun game, but the hokey pokey is also a tool that builds phonological awareness, a key skill that lays a foundation for success with reading. Phonological awareness lets kids recognize and work with sounds of spoken language in syllables in a name. It also involves noticing alliteration, how sounds repeat themselves. For example, Susie sold 6 salami sandwiches. Preschoolers usually include this type of language play, songs, rhymes, and stories in their daily activities. When children have a strong foundation in phonetic awareness, it's easier for them to understand that certain letters stand for specific sounds. That's because they have experience blending sounds into words and taking words apart. And that gives them a head start when it's time to decode letter sounds, hold them in memory, and blend them into words. Now, let's talk about some activities that you can do with students to help them with phonological awareness and phonetic awareness. First one is print concepts. You can teach children we read from left to right. Teach we read from top to bottom. Teach illustrations correspond to the print. Teach students that books come with a front cover, a cover page, a back cover, an illustrator, and an author. To help children who are struggling with this concept, go over this every time you read a story, and they will catch on. Letter naming. Have letters with magnets on them. My students loved this when I did this in class with my preschoolers. Have a toy fishing pole with a paper clip on the end where the hook would normally be. The activity is for the children to go fishing for letters and tell you what they've caught on their pole. Now they might pick up more than one letter, and that's okay. That makes it even more fun. But for those that are having trouble with this concept, do it in a small group, or maybe allow partners to help the other person who's having trouble naming the letters that they've caught. Now, vocabulary, we can use a classroom word wall. You can have students write a paragraph using the words that they see all around the room on the posted word wall posters. For students struggling with this concept, get them a small list of words on a strip of paper and have them make sentences instead of a whole paragraph. How can you teach phonological awareness? Have different shapes cut out ahead of time. I use shapes for seasons and holidays. Have students match rhyming words that you've already printed on the two halves. For example, let's say Valentine's Day. We just had it, so I would have used hearts. I'd write the word cat on one half, I'd write bat on the other half, and I'd ask students to match the words that rhyme. For students struggling with this concept, use partners or small groups. Listening. Clapping out the syllables. I would do this as a group activity. We would first use the students' first names, then as the names were mastered, we would move on to other words. To help those having trouble with this concept, do activities in a large group or small group of students till they feel comfortable with doing this. Speaking. Recite finger plays or have a toy phone in the dramatic play area. All these are ways that you can help children with their speaking skills. To help children with difficulties with this concept, just play with them. Do this on a regular basis and they will begin to improve. Comprehension. Do a reading spinner game. On the spinner, have change in the story, what happened in the story, describe the main character, what problem did you hear in the story, describe the setting, what is the main idea of the story. Now read the story, and as you finish the story, allow the student to spin the dial and answer the question that they've landed on. Now this is going to take some prep work because you're going to have to teach them what each one of those concepts or sentences means. So students have to be taught what each question means so they'll be able to do this activity correctly. This could take time, but once mastered, it's a great activity for comprehension. For struggling students, practice makes perfect. Be patient and work with them or put them with partners and allow the game to be played in small groups rather than just a whole group. I hope that you've enjoyed my paper on phonological awareness and on phonemic awareness. And this is my name, Lisa B. Martinez, and I'm signing off.